What if the Qing Dynasty never fell? The Qing Dynasty is looked upon today as one of the weakest dynasties of history in its dying years, when it was pushed around by the West and Japan. But it didn't always have to be this way. In this video, we are asking, what if the Qing Dynasty survived to the present day? Well, let's have a rundown on the events that led to the downfall. The Qing Dynasty, also known as the Qing Empire, officially the Great Qing, was the last imperial dynasty of China, established in 1636 and ruling China from 1644 to 1912. It was preceded by the Ming Dynasty and succeeded by the Republic of China. The Qing Empire lasted almost 3 centuries and formed the territorial base for the modern Chinese state. It was actually larger than modern China. It was the 4th largest empire in world history. So, what caused the demise of this powerful empire? First, the Sino-Japanese War. So, the Sino-Japanese War was basically conflict between the Qing Dynasty and Japan over Korean territory disputes in 1890s. It is a big loss for the Qing Dynasty. So China agreed to pay a large indemnity and also gave Japan trading privileges in Chinese territory. This treaty was later somewhat modified by Russian fears of Japanese expansion, and the combined intercession of Russia, France, and Germany forced Japan to return the Liaodong Peninsula to China. A Dowager Empress Cixi was a conservative who opposed change and supported any enemies of Western power. Thus, she hindered any modernization of China, unlike what happened in Japan. So China's defeat in the Sino-Japanese War encouraged the Western powers to make further demands to the Chinese government. In China itself, the war triggered a reform movement that attempted to renovate the government. It also resulted in the beginnings of revolutionary activity against the Qing Dynasty rulers of China. Finally, in the 1911 Wuchang Rebellion, the Republic of China was established, and by 1912, the young and last Emperor Puyi was deposed, an inglorious end to over 2,000 years of imperial rule. So how could the Qing survive its collapse? Well, first, the Qing Dynasty has to at least fight the Sino-Japanese War of 1894 to 1895 to a draw or a stalemate, because winning it is not that likely. The Japanese had recently undergone the major restoration, which would render it too powerful for the Qing to fight without any modernization. We'll see later how China could have achieved this stalemate. Second, we put Prince Gong in power. So, who's Prince Gong? He was a regent of the empire from 1861 to 1865, and wielded great influence at other times as well. Prince Gong was Dowager Empress Cixi's crucial ally during the 1861 Xinao coup. He was rewarded by Cixi for his help during her most difficult times, but was eventually eliminated from office by Cixi for his ambition. So in this timeline, it is Prince Gong who assumes power rather than Cixi. With Cixi deposed, we can get something here. So at a young age, Prince Gong was already noted for his brilliance and was once considered by his father, the Daogong Emperor, as a potential heir to the throne. In 1894, when the Japanese invaded Korea and the situation became dire, Cixi actually summoned Prince Gong to the imperial court, placed him in charge of the Baiyang fleet, which was the Qing Navy, and military affairs, and actually gave him some power. However, Prince Gong died in disgrace. So Cixi opposed a movement in the Qing Dynasty that attempted to modernize itself. This was called the 100 Days Reform and the Self-Strengthening Movement. So the Self-Strengthening Movement was a movement in the late 19th century that aimed to modernize China. Now, this movement came about because the Chinese realized that they were losing badly to the Europeans in conflicts like the Opium Wars, and if it had not been opposed by conservative hardliners like the Dowager Empress Cixi, it would have gone through. So, if the Guangxu Emperor, who died at the young age of 18 in this timeline, yet supported the self-strengthening movement. If the Gangshu Emperor had lived longer, under the guidance of Prince Gong, he would have continued with the modernization of China. Think of this like China's Meiji Restoration, where they embrace everything and everyone Western. So by the early 1900s, we see a modernized China, almost at the level of Japan and powerful enough at least to fend off European threats temporarily. The Boxer Rebellion and other movements against the West would still likely happen, however, due to the intense hatred for the West present in Qing China. Now, after the strong Qing government crushes this opposition, what would happen next? Well, the main next threat would be those calling for a republic in China. In this timeline, since the Qing Dynasty will be much more powerful, however, the 1911 to 1912 uprising fails. Sun Yat-sen, the leader of the rebellion, never rises to power as the head of a republic in China. Instead, Puyi, the small child who is placed on the throne just before the collapse of the dynasty, will continue to reign unchallenged. Would communists arise in this timeline? Well, it is unlikely that even if Mao Zedong arises to challenge the empire, that he will succeed in the long term. Essentially, Mao succeeded due to the instability created in the wake of the Second World War, which will be radically different in this timeline. During the years leading up to the Second World War, the Qing dynasty would be able to actively fight and resist any Japanese advances, having modernized their own army. With this, Japan's plans for world domination would be foiled, and it would remain a sidelines player, limited by its lack of resources. This would also force Japan to be more active in invading European colonies throughout the region in order to obtain resources. In this timeline, it is China that actively resists Japan in the Pacific, not the US or other European powers. The US never enters a war, since Japan is already contending with the powerful China, and Japan, due to this fight, never bothers to attack Pearl Harbor. The Axis powers are more soundly defeated in this timeline. The atom bombs are never invented. Japan is greatly weakened from our timeline without any post-war American government, and China is much more powerful. China is the Japan of today, with no nationalists, communists, or anything of that sort. It becomes the center of technology, with Japan lagging behind and being subjected to both Soviet and American influences during the Cold War. Japan becomes Korea 2.0, although it is never divided up like North and South Korea. Today, the Qing Emperor would be more of a figurehead, and China, of course, would be more closely allied with the West and have a democratic government. Tell me what you think about this scenario down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and this is Scholar of the World signing out.